Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Watkins. I'm one of the booksellers here at Green Apple, and I'm happy to welcome you to our event with Michael Dhyne and Shelley Wong. Thank you all for joining us, both in person and online. We have just a few announcements before we get started. For our in-person audience, bathrooms are available just after the show. They're behind our little setup here. And to our online audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to insert them into the live chat, and our authors will be happy to answer them towards the end of the reading. As we move through November, our last month of hosting author events for this year, we truly appreciate your continued support. We will be having another poetry reading this week on Thursday the 16th at 7 p.m. for Jody Servin and Lorene Delaney Ullman for their new collaborative release called Saved, Objects of the Dead, a poetic and photographic exploration of the human experience of life, death, and memory. As always, our full event calendar is online at greenapplebooks.com/event. And this evening, we have Shelley Wong, who is the author of As She Appears, published by Yes Yes Books in 2022, winner of a Lambda Literary Award, and longlisted for the National Book Award. She has received fellowships and support from Kundiman, McDowell, and Montalvo Arts Center. She lives in San Francisco. Please join me in welcoming Shelley Wong and Michael Dhyne.
Thank you so much, Erica and Green Apple Books, for having us here tonight. I'm so honored to be in conversation and to introduce Michael at his debut launch event. Michael and I met in 2015 at Community of Writers and reconnected when we both moved back to the Bay. I'm so thankful for Michael's friendship and his poetry. His poems are finely crafted in their delicate explorations of feeling and how love moves us, holds us, and connects us through loss. It's a vulnerable experience to go through the first book contest process, and I'm so thrilled to see that Michael's collection was chosen by a fantastic judge and has been so beautifully realized in book form. Afterlife was the 2022 winner of the Felix Pollock Prize in Poetry, selected by Eduardo C. Corral for University of Wisconsin Press. Gregory Orr says of Afterlife, in poem after poem, Dhyne creates that urgent space only the best poets can, a space of anguished compassion where the dead and living gather to haunt and in spirit each other's being. Michael Dhyne received an MFA from the University of Virginia, where he was awarded the Academy of American Poets Prize. He is currently pursuing a master's degree in social welfare at UC Berkeley. His work has been supported by the Breadloaf Writers Conference, the Community of Writers, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. His poetry has appeared in Cincinnati Review, Denver Quarterly, Gulf Coast, the Iowa Review, The Spectacle, and elsewhere. Let us congratulate Michael as we welcome him.
Wow. Thanks, Shelley, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you all for being here tonight. I feel kind of like I'm dreaming. Hi, everyone online. I feel really grateful to be with you all here tonight to share some poems from my book, to celebrate having this book. I'm going to read, I think, 7 poems, and then Shelley and I will have a little conversation, and then we'll do a Q&A if anyone wants to ask a question. Am I doing okay?
Great.
This first poem is called Kara. We lifted the parachute high as we could, took turns on our backs, arms pulling the sky apart overhead. Someone said, "Close your eyes," and I felt the room breathe. My father was there, and the house was on fire. We walked the seam between rooms together, like I too had died, and death was a hallway. How else could I be there? It was the dream we all had, our hands becoming hands, as we moved them in tandem. He opened a door, and I couldn't tell the living from the dead. I thought we all were ascending. On the night my heart finally opened, I saw a black ocean hang like a pendulum under a black sky. I swear I've never felt love like this. I say I'm afraid I won't be the same as I was before. And you say it doesn't matter. Let go. This next poem is called Afterlife, so it's the title poem of the book. And I actually just realized this poem and a few others in the collection actually took place down the street here in the Sunset. Afterlife. I'm in San Francisco again, in the basement of that big pink church on the corner of 14th and Judah, handing Max a scrap of paper with the word heaven scrawled in cursive. Music is vibrating from the patchwork carpet like a prayer on fire. The reds, oranges, and yellows matching the sweet flame of his cheeks as he steps out in front of us, conducting the other children from atop a piano bench, waving at empty spaces as if something were really there, something we can't see. And so they begin to act out his drama, what he needs to be real, running around the room in silent fury, beating their bodies together as if they could feel their lives unraveling. They pretend to kill each other, not knowing what their hands could do if they pressed them hard enough in the right places. But these kids don't understand death, thank God, or their own bodies. These kids whose mothers and fathers jumped from the Golden Gate or died of cancer or a brain aneurysm. Sometimes they don't even know what happened. One morning, Max's father just didn't wake up. And now there's a room of children playing dead on the floor. So Max comes down from his throne and touches each one of them, the newly dead, and they rise one at a time and begin to spiral around the room like little angels, whirling around me. I didn't know this could happen, that there's a place where I can see myself as I once was, in a room full of children with no mothers or fathers, dancing, really dancing, in the basement of St. Anne's of the Sunset in San Francisco on a Wednesday night. "4 a.m., where I slip into bed and dream my father's death, where the baggage cart that crushed his body after he hooked it around the concrete pillar on the tarmac at SFO is lifted from his chest, and I see him staring up at the sky as blood pours like honey out of the crushed cave of his sternum. I can see him as if I were one of those last planes he watched taking off, or a wave of starlings crashing overhead. And because this is not real, because this is the only way I can explain to you something I couldn't possibly understand, I can feel his warm blood pool around my body. I can taste its sweetness. There are a few poems in this book that make me feel like I'm going to get in a little trouble. There's a series of road trip poems in the center of the collection about a road trip I went on with my friend from California to Virginia. And this is one of those poems. No, immediately what I mean. Tennessee. This morning, from a plastic film canister, we took the 2 tabs of acid we bought in New Orleans, called our mothers after pressing them to our tongues, and wandered past ourselves into an imagined city, untranslatable as Greek. I thought only our sadness would outlive us, not these bodies and the landscape rearranging under the cruel August sun. When I say we'll have to be each other's mothers, it's too late to ask the mirror light of the river to forgive us. As our sweat-soaked shirts begin to cool and we guess our way back in the dark. Reader, if you believe one thing I tell you, let it be this. I shouldn't have held the microphone. As Jesus sketched my portrait in the dim light of a rented basement room, I sat on the floor and wrote, "I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you." And yes, I was high and in love and crying, but I really did feel my father's spirit move through my body, that he wrote those words, not me. This next poem is dedicated to my mother, who I'm sorry I keep making cry. Like a gift passed between us, I wanted to ask if you could still imagine his body holding yours, your hair scrawled across the pillow like a crown, but I didn't. I wanted to ask, where are you? Or where are you looking? How your eyes kept closing toward the other side. How I held my body just like his without knowing. Mother, what do you remember that I am too afraid to ask? For months I've been taking the blue pills, halved with a dull blade, pulled from a desk drawer in the tiny hours of morning. It has become ritual, like those nights where I saw my grief always as if from a window looking in, our hurried bodies slipping between rooms, out of view. I see the pillows arranged so carefully into a circle. I see us lighting the candles one at a time, saying our names, telling the other families how we died. Remember those nights? We held hands over the center console, driving home. Those nights I'd cry out for you, and that quiet, like a gift passed between us, because there was nothing else to give. How terrible to be at the beginning of something ending, as if learning to speak meant learning how to disappear, like a father. Step into the circle if you feel like no one understands what you're going through. If you still talk to the person you lost. If you're still waiting for them to come back. Just gonna read 2 more poems. This next one is for This next one is from my wife, Nicole. Self-portrait on the beloved's body. I draw a line from your lips down the center of your chest, as if to say, here is where it happened. Here is where grief crushed me, where my father's body opened like a parachute into darkness. The room with nothing in it, the sound of mother crying through the door. I tell you, I never wanted to escape my body. I wanted to re-enter it, to go back to that pain. My days-old grief, my 9-year-old hands tracing its outline in the air above my bed. And when she took us to see the body, my mother said, remember, that's not your father. How can a child understand this? I lost so many years looking at my own reflection because I didn't know where else to find him. Those nights, my touch was a wasted prayer, a supplication. All my life, I'd tried to explain and fail. An accident at work, a spasm of light. No, I don't really understand either. But when we touch, fire asleep in my hand, I realize I'm not finished becoming. Maybe the hour is empty because it's leaving space for you. My pale torso glimmering in the halo of light over the bed. Alright, this is the last poem I'm going to read tonight. Enough is enough. Thank you all for listening. Portrait of my father as a young man. You can't be older than 7 or 8 when I see you smiling with your mother, leaning against the pillows of 2 twin beds pushed together in some tiny apartment in Queens. Your hands are her hands, tangled in movement, the awkward gestures of love, of play. You don't know what this means to me. The bare white walls of wherever you are, like the walls of my first apartment within. Your mother's head against the pillow, looking up at you, raised slightly above her. And the beauty here is that you never look away. Your hair buzzed clean, your big ears, sleeveless undershirt, striped boxers. I want to reach for your ankle, soft and white, wrestle you off the bed, and pull you up again, your hands reaching for mine. But I shouldn't enter the frame any further. I know I am not welcome here, but I need to know who is holding the camera. This feels impossible, that there could be anyone on the other side. I can't see what you're holding, and this part is just pretend, but I can almost see you running into the room, out from nothing. Where were you today when I wanted to say I missed you? Salt water seeping through your clothes on the subway, stepping into the shower alone, rubbing your hands across the mirror steam to see you more clearly. That innocent laughter calls us into the other room. Is this how I was meant to know you? 2 lights glowing at the edges, just out of the frame, lamp lit and warm. Your hands, your bodies, moving. Should I give you this this one. I can go over here. Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, thank you so much for your words, and I feel like I was taking a lot of notes, and I love how there are certain images and it seems like portals that recur, like there's so much opening into and gathering and assembling and circles and holding. Like I love how many hands there are, and I feel like the space that we have here is a holding. Yeah, it's very, thank you for that. To start, I wanted to talk about or ask what it's like writing about grief and personal journey, because it seems like this book covers many years of a life, and that's often with someone's first book. So I'd like to know about that personal journey for you.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I found poetry, it was almost as if I didn't have a choice of what I was going to write about. I think I needed some mode of expression to be able to process, this grief. And it took me a long time to figure out that poetry was going to help me do that. Yeah.
And for you, why do you feel like it's that there's value in speaking about these very difficult, painful issues, which a lot of people struggle with?
Yeah, I guess I'm starting to realize that, it's not maybe a common experience, and I think one of the most gratifying things of seeing people start to read the book is just hearing that it's kind of helped them open up in some ways, the books that have been the most important to me are books about grief and love, and where people are able to communicate their most challenging experiences in a way that incorporates beauty alongside all the difficult stuff.
What were some that were touchstones and also influence your writing and reading?
Books like Li Young Lee's first book, Rose, that's, a lot about grieving his father, but also, they're love poems more than they are grief poems. Marie Howe's What the Living Do is another one of those books for me. That's really raw and honest, able to hold so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout the book, there's a thread of community and grief support groups. You mentioned the Church in the Sunset, and I'm interested if you could speak to their importance in your life and what they've meant to you.
Yeah, it's been immensely important to me. When I was 9 years old, and after I lost my father, my mom was able to find us, me and my brother, these support groups where I could be with other children who'd also lost parents, and it's so important to just normalize that experience and to allow a safe space for kids to be kids, and all the beautiful mess that is. And then in my early 20s, I had the opportunity to volunteer at a similar organization called Josie's Place, which is really wonderful. And because I was so young when I lost my father, I feel like I have so few memories of that time. but being on the other side and seeing children who are going through what I was going through, it was really beautiful, and it felt healing for me to see, witness, and to be there for them was really important. And so I think when I wrote the poem Afterlife about that experience, that really opened something up for me.
Yeah, that seems like another beautiful example of circularity of you being the person to the guide the children and be there. Speaking to the journey of the book, I'm curious how it began, when it began, if it was in undergrad or growing up even, you were writing poems, and then its journey to becoming a book.
Like I said, as soon as I started writing, I felt like I was writing about my father and about these experiences of grief. All of the poems in this book, they started in 2015 when I went to grad school. And I didn't really realize I was writing the book right away, but the obsessions were so obvious of what I was writing about. It just made sense that they belonged together, and that I was building, towards a book, even though I didn't maybe have the language for it or understand that could happen.
And that was the only time you lived outside of California. You were in Virginia, so did you find that being physically distant in a new place or environment could help you?
That's a good question. I think so. I think I needed to kind of leave home and have some space and, in a sense, some solitude to begin thinking about all of these things.
It's a beautiful title and cover, and just the book itself. I was wondering if you could speak to how that came about in terms of the title and cover.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for it, but both the title and the cover were Nicole's idea. My brilliant wife. I think once she suggested that Afterlife could be the title for the whole book, it felt so right. And I think, thinking about what it means for the collection, this is a fairly recent realization, but I'm, coming to see how the book is really, it's about me more than it is about my father. And I think that the meaning for Afterlife, one of them for me is, not thinking about what happens to a person after they die, but what happens to the people they love. And I think in a sense, thinking about how, I'm living in his wake, of his life. And Afterlife kind of makes me think of that. And the cover, this amazing photo of my father when he was a child, and I thought it would be really amazing to just have his image on the cover of the book, on people's shelves and in their hands, and just to be able to keep that alive in some way.
What is the photo that was very familiar to you, that you kind of knew right away that this would be the one?
I grew up with, looking at this image, and, it's on the wall of our apartment, and people would always tell me growing up that I looked just like him too, so it's almost like a self-portrait too.
Well, speaking of your wife, who's also a writer, I was also curious about, and being met in Virginia, how your literary life and life have, blossomed and bloomed into this beautiful love, and how that love has shown through this collection.
It's such a beautiful thing to have someone that you can just read in bed with and share poems that move you, and all the time in grad school we were writing about each other, and think intimacy is something that we both value in life and in art. And it's really important to me to have these love poems in the book. I kind of almost think of them as it's like, at least in the function of the book, the relationship with the beloved, with Nicole, it's like glimpsing into the life of my parents that I wasn't able to see. And so it's kind of it's a healing thing as well, to know what love can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious about the sequence that the poems are written in, and the sequence of ordering the book. Do you recall, like, were the Nicole poems always like at the back, and then
those are most of the last poems that were written, with the love poems at the end, and it feels like that's what the book is moving toward. In a lot of ways. It's not completely linear in narrative, and I think that blurring of time and memory and imagining is really important to me. But I think the book as a whole is moving toward love and toward healing.
I was also interested in, there's so many mentions of space, and I'm also really drawn to the space on the page and the different ways in which you build the space, and the line moves and floats in space. Could you talk a little bit about your use of the line in the stanza and some of the space of the page?
When I think about that kind of formal stuff of, where to end a line or where to break a stanza, I think I'm really thinking about, silence and absence and places where, I feel like it's important to slow down or quiet or a particular moment to emphasize. And that's kind of, there are different forms throughout the book, but I think one that I keep coming back to is the couplet form. And I don't really know why that is. Something about it feels
intimate.
It does feel intimate.
There's so much different forms of breath, like delineation in the space, even between lines. Just the way the collection moves moving through, I feel the opening, in every poem, and different modes of breath and break. Was there anything that surprised you in terms of the book being accepted and then becoming a book in the editorial process?
It's so weird. It's so weird, these poems just living inside me for like 8 years and having them in a physical thing outside of yourself is just, it's like an out-of-body experience.
Did the order or any drastic changes occur, or was it pretty much?
It was pretty much done. I was really stubborn about it.
I
don't know if it was perfect.
No, it was.
I really kind of knew what I wanted it to look like, and was grateful that it could remain that way. But all the surprises have just been emotional. It's an incredibly emotional experience, especially sharing it with people who I've written about.
For sure. Did you want to? I was interested in not only the book journey, but also you're currently a graduate student again, and moving into social work and palliative care work. And so I was interested in kind of how your journey is changing and evolving yet again.
It's so strange, I almost, for so long, all I wanted to do was, be able to teach in like an MFA program, like all my mentors were able to. and that increasingly just felt like a harder and harder thing to do.
Now you have a book.
And now I have a book. And now I'm like, wait a second.
You do everything.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm in school for social work, and I have this wonderful internship where I'm working with palliative care patients, and that also feels incredibly meaningful and like a privileged position to be in people, that part of people's lives where they're at, at the end of their life, and to be witness to such intense pain, but also feel really in touch with what's important, I've had such surprising conversations with people who are really sick and just have the most beautiful outlook on their life. And so, I feel like that's another thing that's been really moving to me. And one of my teachers was talking about how, therapy is kind of like writing a poem together, although, it's not my qualifications. And I really like thinking about that. There's something still very artistic about what I'm starting to do.
Well, as this book travels in the world, I was curious about what you hope for on your book journey in the months ahead and years.
I feel like I wrote the book that my younger self needed, and if I hope for anything, it's that, a handful of people that really need to hear what's in this book will find it, and that, people will read it and feel more connected with their grief if they're grieving, or feel like they're loved or held by the poems. That's really all I want,
Well, it's such a gift and beautiful honoring and incredibly moving, and I have no doubt that it will become that precious collection for so many that they'll want to give to everyone that they know as a gift, and to keep that gift extending. So I see so much love and comfort and that you're giving. So thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for being here tonight.
Really. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
I would like to open it up. If folks have questions or comments or insights.
Pressure.
Yeah.
About poems. Talk about the Warriors or whatever. Might need a break from the sacrament.
Cute stories about Michael.
Oh yeah, lots of family members are here. Embarrassing.
Sorry.
Okay.
Allergies.
Yes.
I was curious, so you've been writing for 8 years, these poems.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how your relationship to the early poems has changed over time, and as your grief has, I imagine, changed.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So how's my relationship to the older poems changed? It feels like it's changed a lot. I was a very different person when I wrote some of these poems. In terms of how I could write and conceive of poem writing and art making, but also just in terms of my own journey with grief and healing and mental health. I think if I were to rewrite some of those poems, they would look a lot different. I think some of the confusion that's there might be gone. Some of the really more intense emotions and anger, have been softened. So I'm really glad that they do exist, as proof of how I did feel. But I'm also grateful that I feel better now. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, and that they exist for other people who are experiencing what you were.
Yeah, who are still in that place. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Wow. Nicole has a question.
Yeah. I loved what Shelley was saying about intimacy and space and being held. And we used to joke about how many hands are in your palms.
Yeah.
But when you were reading them out loud, I was like, I love hearing about the hands. And I wonder if you have anything to say about your hands, your dad's hands, your mother's hands.
What a beautiful question.
What is the function of the hands in your palms?
Hands, it's just,
Being held.
yeah, being held is so important. Touch, like physical touch, can be so important. Yeah, the last two lines in the book are, in death, I believe we are 1,000 things at once. We're a body made up of other people's hands. And yeah, just that thing of thinking that energy doesn't go anywhere, it's just moved between people. Yeah, and there's real value in that. You probably have a better answer to this. You're so good at this stuff.
Being held, other people holding up each other's space helps travel through it to the other side. Just being held and heard.
Yeah,
As
being
simple as that.
heard. Just being there for people, you know, whether that's through touch or listening.
Held and heard, hands and ears.
And what you said in one of the poems about listening as a form of love.
Isn't listening, it's
yeah,
a form of love. Yeah.
Lovely.
It's been really incredible sharing this with my mom, who's one of the heroes of the book.
Incredibly
in many
powerful.
ways the poems are dedicated to.
Incredibly powerful for me.
Yeah.
So
Me too, Mom.
hard to find words. It's very beautiful. Michael always had a way of looking at the world. When he'd drive when he was little, he'd look at something with these questions that were, like asking questions about why they did things, why they hang balloons in car dealerships and things. Just very unusual things.
Yeah, that was another pattern I noticed. There are many questions and italics, and the questions are so, I don't have the adjective, but they're so stunning, and their wonder and tenderness.
Yeah. I think that kind of like looking as if through a child's eyes is really important to me. Trying to hold on to that feeling.
Would you like to close with one more poem?
I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Thanks again, everyone. This one's called Father's Day. In the museum, I press my hand through a square of light and walk into it. You ask me if I felt lonely today, and the asking, more than anything, makes it fall into place. There's quiet clarity now, like the stillness that comes the day after rain, like the recognition of suffering, or seeing your freckles as if for the first time. My love, it's you I'm talking to when no one is around. The you my father once was, and sometimes still is. I tell you I have this memory of looking down at fireworks from so far above, it can't be real. I tell you this, and like a dream it colors itself in, the sky popped with light. I forgot I had prayed for this. Years ago, I held you as close as I knew how, running my hands across my skin. The past tense, a way of saying my life sounds so pure when I tell it back to myself. It rained the entire drive home through the valley, but we stopped anyway, and I took your picture, standing in the middle of the road, wildflowers blooming on either side of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, I think there's books if you want a book, and I could sign it if you like, and all that stuff.
Let's give one more round of applause for Michael and Shelley. Thank you all so much for coming. We're going to have a little book signing right at the desk back here, and drinks are still available. You are all free to go.
Thank you so much. Thank you.